All right, guys. So for today, what I got for you is what if Tanjiro had water breathing? So yeah, it's been a while since I've done Tanjiro what if. Hope you guys all enjoying this. This is gonna be one of my shorter what ifs, just because that's just the way I see this one going. Like if Tanjiro actually had water breathing, yeah, I just see this going pretty quick. You guys do been enjoying this video, please be sure to like, subscribe so we can get the hype button. And yeah, I really don't have that much to say. Water breathing. What is it? Oh, I said water breathing. I meant water bending. I've been saying water bending this whole time, but yeah, water bending. So what is that? Well, basically, it's from Avatar. Basically, it allows the user to control water. So yeah, some water breathers, or actually, really all water breathers, if they're good enough, can even bend the blood in people's body. I'm pretty sure we can see where this is going. But yeah, without further ado, let's start right now. So we start our story off to see Tanjiro Kamado as he was nothing more than just a baby, just being a small child, not really being able to do anything. Well, not even really being a child, because like I said, he was a baby. But of course, Tanjiro would slowly begin to grow up. And as Tanjiro would grow up, he would have these weird visions, these really strange visions that he couldn't exactly explain, where he would see the water differently than other people. Like it would be pulling and pushing, and it was almost like he himself was making the tide change. Of course, Tanjiro, as the time would go on, would begin to get more infatuated with water as he would slowly but surely realize what these images were really telling him. And basically, what we would actually see is Tanjiro's all of the events that take place up until Tanjiro reaching the age of which he is in the main timeline, in the first episode. We just basically see his life going by as he would be more intrigued by water and water each day. His dad would ultimately die to his sickness. He would see his dad doing the Hinokami no Kagura. He would also see more things happening along those lines too, of just the water pushing and pulling and changing. And not only that, he would obviously do his coal salesman business that his family had been doing this whole time as well. So as Tanjiro was going about his days and enjoying his life, enjoying the way the water moved, Tanjiro would one day get an influx of information going into his brain. I'm going to be saying about 2 weeks before the whole event where he has to take the coal down the mountain because his mom asked him to. And Tanjiro would be sitting there wondering what was going on. What is all of this? This is when Tanjiro would obviously go out there and he would start to play around with water bending. He would start to do it and he'd be confused and be like, no way! Am I really controlling water? And yes, Tanjiro would be. Now, of course, Tanjiro for the first 2 weeks would be just starting out. He wouldn't be like some savant like a Tara or something like that, but he would be able to push and pull water. He'd be able to use it to make some slashes. He wasn't a bum with water breathing, but yeah, he surely was a rookie. Ultimately, Tanjiro would tell his parents about it, and parents, I mean his mom and his siblings, and they would all be shocked by this, thinking, how is it possible that Tanjiro's doing this? Ultimately, they would think it was weird and strange, but they promised Tanjiro they would keep it a secret. And just like that, the 2 weeks would pass, with Tanjiro slowly but surely getting better and better with water breathing. Up until the point where dude could actually turn some of the snow around their house into some, water. He could actually convert the snow into water to some degree. And with that being said, ultimately Tanjiro would be asked by his mom to take the coal down the mountain, which Tanjiro said, yeah, I'll take it down there, mom. So as Tanjiro would go to do that, he would ultimately get stopped by the old man as he would be trying to make his way back, as it would be dark outside. And the old man would tell Tanjiro that there are demons about, child. You cannot be out around this time. And Tanjiro would tell the old man that he has no idea what he's talking about. But of course, the old man was right on the money. Of course, Tanjiro, not wanting to upset the old man, would obviously take his deal and obviously sleep with him. Which good thing Tanjiro did, because if he didn't, he would have died. And with that being said, Tanjiro thanks the old man for allowing him to sleep, and he makes his way back up the mountain to find his whole family has been squad wiped. They're cooked. They're done. Nothing changes. Yeah, even though I gave Tanjiro water breathing, water bending. Oh my god, that's gonna really just keep happening, huh? Nothing is going to change. His family still gets, you guessed it, squad wiped. And Tanjiro is left to pick up the pieces thinking, no, no, he would think, and he would say it out loud. Of course, eventually he would stumble onto Nezuko and she would still be warm. So Tanjiro would obviously trying to save his sister's life, but of course take Nezuko down the mountain. Of course, this is when Tanjiro would surely be shocked when Nezuko wakes up and tries to kill him. So we see that whole scene of basically Nezuko trying to take on Tanjiro, but this time Tanjiro has some new tricks. He's a water bending, well, not prodigy, but he's somewhere along those lines. basically think about like he's basically Katara levels of waterbending potential talent. So yeah, he's pretty good, you know, with no one to train him but the memories that he has in his head, which I mean, kind of just plot armor. So really, I can just kind of say he's whatever level I want to say whenever. But I would say he's like Katara in like season 1 Avatar level right now. So when Nezuko tries to obviously attack him, Tanjiro's like, I can do something about this. I can do something about it. And basically, he would throw water in Nezuko's face. I know that sounds so trash, but you know, it's like not with his hand or anything. He literally converts it from snow and splashes in her face. And Nezuko's like, what? And then when that happens, Tanjiro, well, she doesn't say what, but she's like, you know, scratching in her face. Well, not scratching in her face, but you know, when somebody gets water in their face, they're like rubbing their face because, you know, they just got water splashed in it. And Tanjiro tackles her down to the ground and says, Nezuko, snap out of it. You don't have to do this. And then he gets quickly overwhelmed because she's a demon. So I don't know what Tanjiro thought was going to happen. And he gets sent flying off of her. And once that happens, Nezuko basically almost gets killed by Giyu, who comes out of nowhere. But Tanjiro defends his sister, saying, no, Nezuko hasn't done anything. She's my sister and I love her, and all that good stuff that Tanjiro would say in the main timeline. And Giyu's like, you're crazy. And he basically tries to knock Tanjiro out. But once Tanjiro was like on the ground, you know, kind of bummed because even with water bending, there's no way he's reacting to a Hashira. Like, what are we talking about? So anyways, as Giyu basically knocks Tanjiro out and, you know, starts going towards him, you know, trying to tell him, you're ridiculous. This is when Nezuko would get in front of Tanjiro, trying to protect him. And this is when Giyu would realize something. These guys might actually be different. So basically, after that, he sends him to Orakaki, and as you would probably expect, he tells Tanjiro, get it together because you suck. And after that, this is when we see Tanjiro and Nezuko basically put all their family in the graves and basically say their condolences and RIPs and all that cool stuff, and make their way to Orakaki, where they would run into that demon. And as soon as they run into that demon, Tanjiro would use his improving waterbending, because Tanjiro knows, I have to get good. I have to get real good. And if this power can help me pull this off, then I have to get better. So Tanjiro starts training it all day and night. And so when he runs into that demon, he throws a big level of water of ice. Like a big splash. Like imagine like a bucket splashed amount of water in his face. The demon's like, what? Was that demon blood art? How did he do that? But that wasn't any blood involved. What the heck was that? This is just a regular human kid, I'm sure, but I can smell it. Anyways, Orakaki comes in behind Tanjiro, solos the demon, Tanjiro thanks him, and that's basically what happens. So yeah, after that, Orakaki basically asked Tanjiro, what the heck was that? It didn't even look like you used like a bucket to throw that water on him, but I definitely saw it. And Tanjiro going to explain to him, well, I actually have a unique ability. And Orakaki would like do like an eyebrow raise and say, what are you talking about, son? And basically, this is when Orakaki would take Tanjiro and Nezuko back to his place. And basically, he would be debriefed by Tanjiro about the whole situation. Which, I mean, Orakaki kind of knew thanks to Giyu, so you get the point. So ultimately, what we see happen here is basically Orakaki would do the whole thing. So Nezuko would go to sleep for like 2 years. And, you know, that would happen. You know, chill down on her hunger so she's not crazy hungry. You know, that whole thing. And what we would see from Tanjiro is this is when Orakaki would begin to train Tanjiro, but not before we get this conversation. Basically, Orakaki asking Tanjiro, how the heck is that even possible? But he would tell him that if that's really true, that's not unheard of. I heard a long time ago in this world, there used to be people who were actually able to control the elements. And Tanjiro would say, the elements? Like, what elements? And he would say, all four: fire, earth, water, air, all elements. There were these people that were called the air nomads. And then there was the tribes of the water. And then there'd be like the people who could bend the earth itself. And of course, there were the Fire Nation people who could bend fire. But these are all tall tales, and nobody's actually sure if these people actually lived. And the nations used to really be like that all this time ago. It seems like we've quite devolved from where we were back then. But if that's the case, I can only assume that demons somewhat must have come from that era and carried over into ours. I can't imagine people with such strong abilities, though, losing to demons. So I wonder if they snuck around until they all were done. But then I wonder, could the demons also use those abilities? So it seems like a tall tale, if you ask me. I have no idea if it's true or false or any of that, but I definitely know one thing: that ability is extremely useful, especially for what I'm going to be teaching you, Orakaki would tell Tanjiro. And Tanjiro, hearing all this, would say, whoa, so my abilities might actually come from maybe my lineage, he would think. But then he would also think to himself in his brain, he'd be like, then why do I get those visions? Is that maybe like some passed down memories or something? I don't know. It's confusing. And ultimately, with all that being said, that someone would see Tanjiro as he would begin to train with Orakaki, basically doing that whole mountain training, eventually having to get to the point where he's gonna have to destroy that giant rock, or Orakaki would just walk off, and then he would get help from Sabito and Makamo, helping him to, eventually destroy that rock. Which states to the fact that Tanjiro had more to do in this timeline. He would actually work on water breathing and water bending. So as time would go on, Makimo and Sabato, they would just watch Tanjiro as he would only do something that only he could do, and they were just amazed, or I guess their ghosts were amazed because of seeing what Tanjiro was doing. And thanks to Tanjiro playing around with water bending and water breathing, it got to the point where Tanjiro was able to enhance his water breathing with water bending, being able to mix the two. So basically, it's like Tanjiro can actually make it where, how basically the attacks in Demon Slayer are not actually real, like they're just imagination. Basically, it's just art. It's not actually what's happening, but it's basically what the opponent visualizes is happening, and what the Demon Slayer visualizes what's happening when they use a sword attack, but it's not actually what's happening. Well, guess what? Tanjiro has the added effect that thanks to being a water bender, he can actually make those effects real. So Tanjiro begins to work on each form of water breathing and basically try to incorporate water bending into it so that he can actually turn those forms into the actual technique in real time. So Tanjiro, working hard on this, will begin to try to create something that basically, so how Katara keeps her little pouch on her with water in it? Well, guess what? That's the same type of stuff Tanjiro was starting to make, but he was going to make a big one that he could put in his bag. So basically he would have access to that. So as Tanjiro would keep training and training and training and training, he would eventually be able to break the rock with pure water breathing. But Tanjiro didn't want to use water bending to help him break the rock, because if he did, it would have been easy. He could have easily done that by this point. Tanjiro was converting whole trees into a live stream of water. Dude is actually become a crazy powerful water bender by this point. No, yeah. So anyways, with this being said, Tanjiro would then eventually go back to Orakaki, as Orakaki would send Tanjiro to where you would probably imagine the final selections. He would tell him, there's nothing more that I can do to train you. And just like that, Tanjiro would get sent to final selection. So as Tanjiro gets sent to final selection, we're going to be seeing Tanjiro do what you would probably imagine somebody with water bending would do. Tanjiro doesn't play around. He doesn't use his increased technique or his skill or anything. He uses water bending off rip. He takes water out of the trees and uses it to make this wave to ride on. And everybody's just looking at him like, what the heck? How is he doing that? Because that's actually insane. There's no way you're actually doing that. That's ridiculous. But yeah, Tanjiro takes a wave. And what does Tanjiro do? Well, Tanjiro goes throughout the demons and, he destroys them. Well, easily, he's cutting them, cutting them with his water, blades, not making water blades, but how Katara will grab a little grain of water and then use it to slash. Yeah, that's what Tanjiro was doing. So he would slash demons, cutting them, and then cutting their limbs off. And then he would bring out his Nichiren blade and then just cut them, cutting their heads off. And this would allow Tanjiro to kill tons of demons. He would have killed 25 demons, and he would save 9 people from dying. And that would make Tanjiro really happy until, of course, Tanjiro would run into none other than, you imagine, the hand demon. So the hand demon starts gloating about how he killed Sabito and how he killed Makimo and how he was so cool because he did that. And then Tanjiro hears this and thinks, yeah, you're going down. So Tanjiro, obviously being goated and having access to true forms and stuff, Tanjiro would go for a water bending first form water surface slash, which basically allows Tanjiro to basically do exactly what you would see happen in the animation, in Demon Slayer. So just actually watch the animation of first form water surface slash and just imagine that actually happening. As Tanjiro again has figured out how to combine water bending with his water breathing. So this would make a perfect form, this kind of pile out of that, and basically it would be enhanced with actual water that Tanjiro would obviously keep on it. So of course, and also because Tanjiro is fighting in an area with trees, if you didn't know this, the waterbenders actually can, lore-wise, take water out of the trees and use it to bend. So that's not just something I just came out of nowhere with. That's a real thing. So of course, Tanjiro would, of course, do that too. And of course, because he does that, Tanjiro cuts the hand demon's head off with no trouble. His head just gets sent flying. He's like, how did he do that? That was a demon blood art. And yeah, that was the end of that. So once that happens, Tanjiro passes final selection. Yay! And Sabito and Makimo are avenged. And of course, the whole Genya thing happens where Tanjiro's like, stop that. She's a lady. And of course, that's the end of that. So with that being said, Tanjiro goes back home. Order finally gives him like Nezuko back. Tanjiro gets his actual Nichiren blade, and yeah, that's the end of the final selection arc, or whatever this arc is called. And now we see Tanjiro make his way to defeat Muzan Kibutsuji. So he would. And of course, as Tanjiro was doing this, while he was taking his time and walking, Tanjiro would obviously have gotten that giant canister of water just in case he needs it in his box with Nezuko. And she would just be holding onto it while she sleeps or whatever. That's what we're going to be saying happens. And also, Tanjiro, again, with water, you can literally just take water out of trees. Doesn't actually need to be around straight up water. He doesn't have to be around a river to water them. But if he's around a river, dude is kind of broken. So anyways, Tanjiro would keep going and going, eventually until he gets to that village where we would have the swamp demon. And of course, Tanjiro, using his sense of smell, would obviously use it to his advantage, as people would start telling him about all the events taking place in this village. And of course, Tanjiro would do what you expect. He'd use his water bending his sense of smell. And obviously, as nighttime would fall, the swamp demon genuinely stood. Like, I genuinely can't tell you, because it's a swamp demon, so he needs water too. Well, I'm sorry, he's just destroyed. Like, I really would like to tell you, like, some cool stuff happens here, but no, the swamp demon just gets absolutely destroyed. Thanks to water bending, plus Tanjiro's sense of smell, plus him being a competent demon slayer who could beat them in the main timeline without the extra help of water bending, there's just no way the swamp demon has any chance. So he gets beheaded however many times he makes heads. And that's the end of the swamp demon. So yeah, Tanjiro saves everybody. He saves that guy's wife or girlfriend, so she doesn't die. If she did die in the main time, I kind of can't remember right now. But yeah, he saves her. So don't worry, nobody dies except for the people that died before Tanjiro got there, obviously, because, well, what's he gonna do? He's not there. So anyways, Tanjiro's very happy about this, and he obviously goes and leaves, because now Tanjiro has the ability to go to the next place, which would be none other than the city, which I can't remember right now, but it'd be the city where he runs into Muzan Kibutsuji. Of course, Tanjiro would go into the city. You know, he's really happy about the way things played out until he starts smelling some familiar scent. And he's like, no, it can't be. That's the scent of. As Tanjiro would immediately use his canister, he would open up Nezuko's like box and use the water in the canister to start creating a small wave to rush him over there to where he's smelling that scent. And as Tanjiro would get there, you know, he would obviously stop riding away with water, because that's like really weird. Like, what? So Tanjiro would put the water back in his canister, close the box, and as he would look forward, he would see it right there. He would see none other than Muzan Kibutsuji in the flesh. And Muzan would obviously get that same speech that Tanjiro gives him in the main timeline, where he's like, I'll hunt you down. There's nothing you can do to stop me. And the demons that Muzan creates gets instantly defeated because Tanjiro uses his canister of water to use water breathing to help him. So don't worry, everybody's okay and stuff. So Tanjiro easily defeats him. Muzan doesn't even really see what happens. He's like, I dare that demon slayer come over here and start talking to me. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. In the initial script for this, you probably imagine, I kind of had Muzan dying there, but I realized it would be kind of ridiculous to have him die right there, so I'm just not even... Well, I say you can probably imagine, but that's actually cap. You probably couldn't imagine that. But yeah, there was a reason for that. But the thing is I realized something. It's just a little too fast of a what if I did that, and I just rather not do that. But there was something I was going to say happens there, but nah, I just rather not do that. So we move on to the next arc, which... Oh, I said the next arc. Well, no, Tanjiro would fight the arrow demon and the volleyball or the ball demon. I think it wasn't the ball demon. I was gonna say volleyball demon, but yeah, he fights them with Tamio and Yushiro's help, and of course, and Nezuko, obviously, her help too. And they get destroyed. And once that happens, he meets Tamio and Yushiro for real this time. And they basically are like, you know what? We can help your sister become normal and stuff. And that was where all Tanjiro needed to hear. He's like, oh, that's so cool. And he was cool with them at first, despite them being demons. So, you know, that's all the way the world works, right? It goes around in nice circles, you think. And of course, Tanjiro would leave with this knowledge, and he would obviously still have that bird that he has, so he can tell Tamio how things goes and how sure she can keep data on Nezuko. So with all this being said, this pretty much ends the arc. I don't know what that arc's called. And now we have the arc of the mansion arc, where Tanjiro would run into the likes of Zenitsu and Inosuke. And obviously Zenitsu would have his moment where he falls asleep, kills the demon, it looks awesome, and then Inosuke would run around killing demons as well. Of course, Tanjiro would get into his in a famous fight against the Drum Demon, who was once a lower moon. And the Drum Demon would be doing a lot of really cool stuff, obviously flipping around the mansion, you know, using his demon blood art as well as he could. And Tanjiro, using his water, would be able to actually, you know, make himself kind of hard to like kill with like objects. I see he'd be using the water to break his fall and stuff like that. And obviously Tanjiro would obviously use an enhanced the water bending water breathing technique. He would use second form water wheel, and it would actually be water, a water wheel, like it would actually be water on top of him spinning in like a wheel motion. So yeah, this would do added damage to the drum demon. He'd be like, what is that, a demon blood art? How are you? And before he even knows it, Tanjiro's using third form flowing dance, and he's dead. And yeah, that's literally what he used in the main timeline, if I'm not wrong, was flowing dance. So yeah, the end of that. And once the drum demon is like killed, he's like, I'm all sad. And you know how most demons are in Demon Slayer. So Tanjiro defeats him. And once that happens, Zenitsu and Inosuke are like, Tanjiro, why are you carrying a demon? As Inosuke would try to kill Nezuko, Tanjiro stops it by headbutting him. And that's pretty much the end of that. So once that being said, we basically see the boys basically make their way to that lady's house, the Demon Slayer rest stop. As that happens, we would then see Inosuke be like, whoa, she's like nice to me for some reason. What's going on? And once that happens, they would sleep, and then they would get the notification to go to Mount Nategumo, right? So the boys make their way to Mount Gumo, or that's how you say it. And of course, all of the events pretty much happen as you expect. Zenitsu doesn't go in with Tanjiro and Inosuke, so he's left behind. And thanks to Tanjiro's water breathing, I'm not water breathing, but water bending, he creates a wave out of trees. And Inosuke's like, how are you doing that? That's so cool. And then Tanjiro, you know, he just goes through like this blind wave. You know, he carries Inosuke on a smaller wave behind him. And he runs into like the spider demon mother. And she's like, what the heck? How is he doing that? And you know how like she killed those two humans in the main timeline? Yeah, like those two weak fodder demon slayers. Yeah, that doesn't happen because Tanjiro comes in, slashes her arms off with water bending, and then grabs his Nichiren blade. And he sees like she's like trying to be all cool and stuff. So he used less rain after the drought like he did in the main timeline. And well, she's dead. And once that happens, there's the spider demon dad, and he shows up. And thanks to water bending, Tanjiro just literally smashes a ton of water onto him. Because if you guys remember correctly, when they were fighting, there was a river right there. So Tanjiro grabs a large chunk of water out of the river and just slams it onto him and just holds him still. And he tells Inosuke, go over there and just tear into him. So Inosuke just starts using beast breathing and just starts cutting his head off. And he succeeds. And once that happens, he's dead too. So Tanjiro and Inosuke are feeling pretty good because thanks to Tanjiro's, water bending, they're just kind of making quick work of these demons. So the father two demon slayers run away because they're like, what the heck? Is he a demon or a demon slayer? I mean, he's using both techniques. I don't know, but he saved our lives, so he's probably on our side. They would run away. And Tanjiro and Inosuke would move forward. Now, thanks to this river being here, Tanjiro's even more powerful. So he carries Inosuke in a larger pool of water as he makes his way forward, with Nezuko not even getting out of her box, just asleep, being pretty confident in Tanjiro, just believing in him. And as this happens, they would run into none other than Rui on their wave. And obviously, he'd have his like fake sister demon, right? So anyway, he would tell her to get gone or something, you know. And of course, Rui would look and say, what the heck? How are you doing that? Oh, you're no demon? And Rui would obviously try to attack the likes of Tanjiro, trying to kill Tanjiro. And this would start Tanjiro versus Rui, which I'm not gonna lie is actually a high level battle. It's a high level battle Cuphead style because Tanjiro, you know, water bending is pretty cool. He's using it to counter like Rui's spider webs, which Rui's spider webs are still spider webbing. And with the Inosuke there giving him some backup, and obviously Nezuko coming out because she's trying to protect her bro, Rui being like, I want her as my sister. This would all lead to this big battle between just one guy. But honestly, with Inosuke and Nezuko support and Tanjiro just having that big ability of water being like right next to him, Tanjiro also being able to pull water out of the trees and stuff, he's just using mainly water bending to just do most of his work right now. He's not even really able to go for anything else, because if he doesn't, Nezuko is keeping Inosuke from death, and he is keeping Inosuke from death, but Tanjiro has to keep himself from death. So he's actually out here putting in water bending work, and he's starting to get tired just doing all these different motions and forms. He's never had to do it for this long. I'd say they've been fighting for about like 10 minutes. So Tanjiro just keeps going and going. He's like, I'm getting tired. There has to be some type of a change here, something to change it up. I gotta figure something out, he would think. But Tanjiro's starting to lose it. He's starting to go lower and lower, not really knowing what to do, starting to actually faint due to the tiredness. And just as he would start to lose it, this is when he would look as a strain of a spider web was about to cut Inosuke's whole arm off. Rui was about to actually do it. He would start to have a smile on his face. He would say, I don't know how you're doing that, but it looks like I finally got the advantage, he would think. And this is when Tanjiro would have it. A spark goes into his head as he would look and say, what the heck is this memory? What am I seeing? And then it would fade to black. And then Tanjiro would see it. Something dark, something weird, something he needed to do right now. As Tanjiro would feel it coursing through his veins. The full moon was out tonight, and Tanjiro could feel it. And because of that, these memories unlocked Tanjiro's full power, a water breather's full power, a water bender's full power, I mean to say. And that was none other than blood bending, as Tanjiro would then start to stop Rui's hand that was controlling the spider web, as he would make it move backwards. And Rui would be like, what the heck just happened? As something stopped. And in that instance, Inosuke would say, whoa, my arm. It was almost, as he would run towards him with beast breathing, as he would go to cut Rui's head off. And of course, Rui would try to cut his own head off, trying, but he would have no chance of doing this, as Tanjiro would hold him still, using blood bending, controlling all the blood in Rui's body, and just making him stay there, weakening his durability on top of that. Sure, he couldn't even embrace his neck with his powerful blood given to him by Muzanki Butsuji. And just like that, Rui's head gets sliced off, killed by Inosuke and Tanjiro, as Tanjiro would push Rui's body to the ground using blood bending, feeling the power coursing through his veins next to a full moon, being able to only blood bend during this full moon. And with that being said, that ends this arc of Mount Niagomo, as the other Demon Slayers will come in, as they would take a look, and they would see Tanjiro knocked out, Giyu would, as he would question all of this. Now, of course, we would see Shinobu and Kano show up, and they would obviously try to kill Nezuko, but Inosuke would be the one that stood up for Nezuko in this timeline, and Giyu obviously stopped Shinobu. Of course, thanks to all of this happening, Tanjiro is knocked out, so he is taken back to the Demon Slayer corpse. And actually, unlike most of my what ifs where Tanjiro was like fully awake during all of this, he's actually put in like that little jail cell, and Nezuko is not actually no, I take that back. So basically, Tanjiro's in a little jail cell, and they basically question him about Nezuko's existence, and Nezuko's there. And basically, while this is all happening, they're like, well, we don't know. We should probably kill it because you're going against Demon Slayer rules. So Sanemi tries to attack Nezuko, right? He tries to do that. But Tanjiro's in his little restraints, as you know, the Hashira are standing in front of him. But Tanjiro is like already breaking out of that. And before Sanemi can even grab Nezuko, he's broken out of it, using water breathing to basically create like this little small like water like cutter. You know what I mean? Like Katara does. And basically he cuts out of the restraints. And well, once Tanjiro does that, he cuts Sanemi's hand a little bit. He's like, what the heck just cut me? And then right after that, Tanjiro headbutts him in the head. And Nezuko doesn't even get like slashed in this arc. So with that being said, at all. So she's not harmed at all. Tanjiro protects his sister. And he breaks out of his leg restraints too. And he says, if you want something, then try it with me. Don't do anything to my sister. She didn't ask for any of this. You know, giving his whole anime character main speech nonsense. And basically Sanemi's about to do something. But then this is when Kagayu's was like, calm down, everyone. Everything's okay. This is all great. Tanjiro's the first Demon Slayer forever to run into Muzan, and we need his help, especially with his special qualities. And of course, with all this being said, everybody calms down, and Tanjiro is happy to hear that Kagyu and talks or whatever. Of course, he would obviously question about water bending, and everybody else does too. And Kagyu would tell him that long ago he heard stories as well, similar to Orakaki, about basically people who could actually bend the water itself. So it's not like this was some, unheard of thing. Kagyu had heard the stories too. So ultimately, with this being said, everybody would basically be like, oh, so he's really special then because he can literally bend water and he's a water breather. That's pretty cool. Obviously, Tanjiro never, and I'm actually just going to be saying this because it's just true. Tanjiro will never learn Hinokami. Well, he has Hinokami no Kagura, but he's just never going to actually use that. It's just not necessary. We're going to see why in a second. So anyways, basically Tanjiro stays at the Butterfly Mansion. Him, Zenitsu, and Inosuke basically recover. They do all the training you would probably imagine. They learn total concentration breathing. They can break the vases with their breath. And after that happens, we see them go and move forward. So as this happens, this is where they are sent on the Mugen Train arc. And there they run into the likes of Rengoku. And when they run into Rengoku, Rengoku is, shocked to run into Kamado and his friends. So ultimately, as they all sit there on the train, that's all happening. This is when we would see Inmu attack. And basically, Tanjiro, as you probably imagine, um, has the advantage on these demons. Because unlike normal demon slayers who aren't stronger at night, Tanjiro actually is stronger at night thanks to the full moon, and you know how that works. So it makes the water bending even more powerful. And since Tanjiro always keeps his like canister of water on him, well, Tanjiro has some water to bend all the time. And even though he's not really around trees or anything like that in the motion of the train, Tanjiro in the main timeline was strong enough to beat Inoue anyway, so he doesn't even need like the added fix. Since Tanjiro can just use enhanced Demon Slayer arts and has Inosuke's help, I'm just gonna be saying Tanjiro would get to Imu, after he has that whole thing where he falls asleep and basically killing himself a couple of times. That would still happen. I don't see that changing. And Tanjiro would use like sixth form, true sixth form whirlpool. I'll say true because he's using a water bending to like enhance it to literally being a whirlpool. And Imu is like literally hit like 7 times before his head is cut off, and he's just defeated. He becomes that big blob thingy, and Tanjiro, well, no, he doesn't, because Tanjiro just cuts his head off, before he can even really do that. So he's defeated, and once that happens, that's pretty much the end of Imu. And as that happens, the train, it crashes, and once that happens, everybody's like, wow, I can't believe we survived that. And of course, as everybody's getting out of the train, this is when we would see none other than Akaza just appear out of literally nowhere. Like, where did Gang come from? And as everybody turns, Rengoku especially turns, this is when we would see Akaza versus Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, Nezuko, and Rengoku. Which, obviously, if it wasn't very obvious, I'm going to be saying this was a full night, full moon, and, yeah. Tanjiro knows that the only way they're going to win this, or the best way to win this, would be to do what he did against Rui. So he starts trying to do it, and I'm not even going to lie, he can't even do it at first. He's struggling. He's like, how did I do that? I just felt it all at that one time, all at that one moment. So as Tanjiro keeps trying to do that, he's also helping Rengoku by basically thinking, maybe if I get back to that state that I was in before, being extremely weak, I could do something. So basically he's, coming in, slashing, throwing water at him, trying to like hit him with that little water cutter, that whole sort of thing. And basically as that's happening, he's like, what the heck? Does that kid have a demon blood out or something? How is he doing that? But Akaza is able to kind of avoid it, but thanks to Tanjiro's help, it's annoying. And obviously with Inosuke's help and Nezuko's help, it's kind of annoying for like Akaza, but they can't really help because Akaza and Rengoku are on another level, you know what I mean? But Inosuke's trying to do something, but it's just not working. But Tanjiro is really the one who's doing the most because of the water bending. Eventually Tanjiro can feel it again and he sees it. He's like, I got it. I figured out how to. And at that instant, Tanjiro would do it. He would bloodbend Akaza to stand still. And as Rengoku would see this, he would be wondering, what the heck? As this is when Rengoku sees an opening, he's like, I know what I have to do. As he uses it, Rengoku, his form. And yeah, he slices Akaza's head straight off. Because again, Tanjiro, when he uses bloodbending, he can literally just stop, the demon's ability to reinforce their neck, and he can just stop them from moving. So yeah, Akaza's head gets sent flying, and Tanjiro moves his body to the ground just like that, controlling it just to make sure he can't do any more damage. And that's just what happened. Akaza would begin to try to regrow his head like he did in the Infinity Castle, but it doesn't work because the sun comes out and Akaza is dead. Now, as I would like to probably tell you, this is probably where we would probably be done with this, but no, this is when the unthinkable happens. Muzan Kibutsuji appears. I bet you're thinking like, what are you talking about, dude? You're making some what if fan fiction, but I mean, low key, this is a what if, so just strap in. So Muzan had heard, right? He'd heard what happened to Rui, and I mean, he hadn't heard, but obviously Nakime, which is the one with like the little strings, who it makes like the Infinity Castle, that sort of thing, controls it. She would have been like, I don't know what happened to Rui, but something weird happened. She would tell Muzan, and Muzan would be like, what do you mean weird? So Muzan deciding, seeing Akaza going to go fight, the likes of the same guy, who was around during that time period, he would obviously be, like, okay, I'm going to pay attention. And to his shock, he sees Akaza get moved and forced to just sit there and get his head cut off. And then, of course, the sun would come out, of course. So Muzan, and by the way, I didn't mean Muzan was about to attack Tanjiro. I meant like he was looking at the whole thing, you know, from the Infinity Castle. That's more so what I meant, not him actually appearing. But yeah, so he was looking and seeing it. So he saw what Tanjiro did and he was shocked by this. So of course, as you would probably imagine, Muzan is now super scared of Tanjiro. So obviously, when Tanjiro goes to the entertainment arc, obviously when Goku survives in this timeline, I thought I'd mention that real quick. Things are going to be super scary for Tanjiro. So as Tanjiro would arrive in the entertainment arc with Tengen, Zenitsu, Inosuke, himself, and Nezuko, you would imagine that everything would go good. Except it wouldn't. Because when Tanjiro gets there, he's greeted to a gigantic shock. There's Upper Moon 6, 5, 4, 2, and 1 all waiting on him. As they are all about to jump Tanjiro and his team. And I'm not gonna lie, there's only one thing that he can do, well they can do. They send help to Demon Slayer Corps to get back up, because if they don't, they're cooked. So yeah, I'm talking about like straight off rip. Like they get into the city, I'd say they're there about 3 hours before it just goes to destruction, and they're just forced to fight. Now obviously, Inosuke and Zenitsu are not ready for this stage, outside of maybe being able to do something with Daki and Yutaro. Other than that, they're just not ready for this stage. So ultimately, it's just Tanjiro versus them, and this really isn't working. Now Tanjiro is using all of the water he can find to basically create like he's converting it into ice, you know, trying to do his best to just hold them off, hold the line. And Tegan, obviously by himself, you know, he's trying something, right? But this just isn't really working out for them. I mean, until Tanjiro got to the point where he would once again realize, yeah, I know this sounds like it's plot armor, but it's really not. Like, I'm so serious. Like, if you actually watch Demon Slayer, I feel like almost every night in Demon Slayer, it's like a full moon, right? And yeah, so of course, Tanjiro's powers are amped, which is why Tanjiro's even doing this well right now with the odds, you know, taking it against him this far. So Tanjiro would realize something. If he has the ability to control their blood and actually make them weak enough for even Inosuke and Zenitsu to fight them, Tanjiro will realize that as long as he siphons off their paths and get them in places where they could cut them, as long as they're nerfed to the point of, Tanjiro will begin to start doing that. So he would start using his water breathing, not water breathing, but water bending to force them into situations where he could actually blood bend them and let Inosuke or Zenitsu take them out. So when it came to Kitaro and Daki, he would actually get them in an area together where he could actually stop them both. And Tegan would obviously come through and slash both their necks off at the same time. The reason for this was literally just because they were fighting together. So they were right next to each other. So Tanjiro literally just did that on purpose because they were close, not because he knew about the trick. So their heads come off and they're just starting to like evaporate. And they were like, how did you know our trick? There's no way. Tanjiro was like, what trick? I didn't know anything. I just did that because you guys were right next to each other. And that was just the most optimal thing to do. And they were like, what? What luck? And of course, this would obviously lead to Tanjiro singling off Hintengu and Upper 5. And of course, Upper 2, which would be Doma. And of course, Upper 1. And I'm sorry to tell you this, even Kokushibo, who obviously was not fighting alongside the other demons. Like, I know I said he was here, but he was more so just watching to see what Tanjiro was even going to do, what he was even doing. But because he did this, it got to the point where Kokushibo was like, oh, I can probably just stop Tanjiro, right? Like, he can't stop. He can stop him from, you know, using bloodbending. Yeah, that's not how that works. And obviously Kokushibo, I'm sorry, he gets nerfed by bloodbending, and Tengen having to use his full power because Kokushibo's neck was still like ridiculously tough, even when Tanjiro nerfing it to its absolute maximum. And obviously he was able to cut his neck off. So as you probably expect, Muzan has to come because all of his upper moons just got defeated by one kid by basically just routing off the paths and basically just lowering their durability to the point where Nichiren blades were basically strong enough to, even when the Demon Slayer was weaker, to basically cut their heads off. So Muzan says, yeah, you're way too big of a problem, and tries to kill Tanjiro, Tengen, Zenitsu, you know, and you know, all that. So he goes for that. But this is when the backup arrives, and now all the Hashira are here. And Muzan's like, oh, this isn't good. So Muzan attempts to run away. You know, he tries to run away because he's like, no, this is bad. But then Tanjiro's like, no. And basically he uses bloodbending to pull Muzan back, make him face his crime. And so Muzan tries to start transforming. He tries to start going full power. But then Tanjiro's like, no. And he stops it using bloodbending, using all of his power in his body, all of it. And Tanjiro's like, guys, go! Defeat Muzan! Defeat him now! And so they all just start letting off their breathing forms. All the Hashira doing this really cool action sequence of just letting off form at Muzan. As Shinobu's poison starts to set in, Muzan can't really do anything to counter it. But of course, this would ultimately lead to Tanjiro tooling out as the moon would come to a close. But as the moon was coming to a close, don't worry, the sun was coming. And thanks to Shinobu just being able to sit there and point blank just throw poison in this dude, just being able to do it over and over again. And the other Hashira just jumping him. Yeah, Muzan, he dies to the sun. And with that happening, that's basically the end of Muzan, the upper moods. Yeah, Tanjiro with water bending, which, yeah, I'm not even joking. Blood bending is just that OP, especially against demons. Like, imagine, like, he can literally just stop their whole gimmick, right? Like, their whole gimmick of hardening their, like, necks and stuff by literally just stopping them from doing it. He can keep them in place so that the other demon slayers can, like, literally just cut their hex off and stuff. So, yeah, that's what would happen. The Demon Slayer Corps would then begin to work on destroying the rest of the Demon Slayer Corps. They would all thank Tanjiro, they'd all praise him. And of course, Nezuko would eventually get healed thanks to Tamayo's medicine. And they would be allowed to live a peaceful life, getting blood donors to give them blood, as they would be the only two last demons on Earth. And with that being said, Tanjiro would be happy to have achieved his goal as avenging his family and making his sisters back into a human. And with that being said, the Demon Slayer Corps would obviously, stop being united, as they were sure all demons but Tamayo and Yoshiro were dead. And with that being said, guys, this is where we would see Tanjiro recap these events, as he would thank the world that he was able to gain these abilities to control water, because without them, he never would have been able to accomplish these goals. And of course, with that being said, this is when we would see the screen fade to black, as this would be the end to what if Tanjiro was a water bender. So, if you guys did end up enjoying this video, please be sure to leave a like, you can't hype, but subscribe so we can get the hype button. And basically, with that being said, I'm out. Until next time. See you guys, because I've kept you guys long enough. I guess not as long as usual, but it's pretty long. So yeah, hope you guys all enjoyed it. Hope you guys like the route I went. I know I kind of made Tanjiro's, like, water bending a little plot armor with a, blood moon. Well, not blood moon, but the, full moon, because it's how a bloodbender, does that. And yeah, I'm out. Until next time, God bless. See you guys next time. Peace.